My wife went abroad for 3 years. When she came back, I was overjoyed and went to the airport to pick her up. However, besides her, there was also a toddler. My colleagues even made fun of me, saying the child may not be yours, but your wife still is. Hearing their laughter, I turned around and signed the divorce papers without hesitation. Finally, I decided not to be a fool. Liu Ryan was my wife. She was stunningly beautiful, a natural-born enchantress. After joining the company, she quickly rose through the ranks. 3 years ago, she went abroad on a business trip. She told me, 3 years, 1 million. When I return, our life will be better. Today was the day she was coming back to the country. I had taken leave to pick her up. When I arrived at the airport, I spotted her from afar. It had been 3 years since we last met. She had put on a little weight, but that was fine. I waved at her excitedly. Then I noticed there was a woman in her 50s beside her, and she was holding a child. As they approached, my wife took the child into her arms. I froze. Then I thought, she must be helping someone out. She is beautiful. Wife! I couldn't help but shout. She slowly walked toward me. When she saw me, she handed the child to the woman beside her. You two wait in the car, she said. The child began crying for her, and the woman comforted him. Mama will come soon. Mama? I was stunned. Mama? I looked at Liu Ryan. What did she say? Mama? Liu Ryan replied in a low voice. Yes, Liang Shuo. We need to talk, she said. She walked to the side, and I quickly followed her, eager for answers. Up close, I noticed something. A faint scent of milk clung to her, and her body now carried the softness of a mother. Liu Ryan, I asked, what's going on with the child? Don't tell me. You went abroad for 3 years and had a baby. Liu Ryan's face was cold and emotionless. You've seen it for yourself. I didn't want to hide it from you. The child is mine. But I'll give you an explanation. Go home for now. Once I've handled my business, I'll get in touch with you. And just like that, without giving me a chance to say anything, she turned around and walked away. I stood there stunned, and it took me a while to snap out of it. When I rushed outside, I saw her in the arms of President Kui, both of them getting into his Mercedes. Kui Hao! Suddenly, everything made sense. 3 years ago, Kui Hao had also gone abroad on a business trip. Before he left, I had given him some expensive gifts, asking him to take care of Liu Ryan. Turns out, he took care of her all the way into his bed. I clenched my fists in rage. I turned and drove to the office. Now that she had a child, Liu Ryan would definitely go home first. Which home, I didn't care, as long as it wasn't mine. With my eyes burning, I stormed back to the office. Just then, I overheard some people chatting in the break room. They say Liu Ryan's been promoted again. Well, a beautiful woman like her always rises quickly. Not just beautiful, she's had a son too. Even if President Kui can't marry her, he's got to give her something. Seems like Liang Shuo has it all figured out, living off his wife without feeling the least bit guilty, treating her like a surrogate. Hearing their words was like plunging into an icy abyss. They all knew that Liu Ryan had gone abroad to be with Kui Hao, and they kept it from me. I was the fool, joking around with them, telling them how much I missed my wife. I once told Liu Ryan I would visit her abroad, but she had refused, saying it would be inconvenient. It'd take over a week to travel back and forth, wasting time and money. There's no need. She always brushed me off with that same excuse. Liang Shuo, she'd say, I'm doing all of this for our little family. Can't you just be patient? Patient? I had been patient for 3 years, not going to see her, and this was the result I got in return. Thinking of this, I cleared my throat. The people in the break room turned to see me, their faces instantly turning awkward. Liang Shuo, You, came for some coffee too? Yeah, and to catch up on some gossip, I replied, forcing a smile. The atmosphere was tense. One of them mustered the courage to speak up. Liang Shuo, it's really not such a big deal, you know? Others wouldn't even get the chance you've had. Unlike you. You've still been getting your salary for 3 years, and your wife's been out making big money. When she comes back, she might even be a director. So how does it feel? Got any tips you can share with us? He looked at me sheepishly. I knew. He had resented being in my team for a while, always slacking off, doing nothing but kissing up to the higher-ups. Another team had requested to take him, and I had planned to transfer him by the end of the month. But now, thinking about it, I realized I couldn't deal with him anymore. His path was already set, but before he left, I needed to teach him a lesson. I smiled at the man who had been talking. He was a grown man, yet so gossipy. Definitely had potential to be a busybody. Actually, I said, I do have a shortcut for you. Do you want to take it? Curious, he leaned in closer, and I motioned for him to come nearer. Suppressing my anger, I whispered in his ear, you could just drop your pants and get started yourself. What did you say? I raised my hands. Weren't you asking me for some tips? Don't you like hearing the truth? Liang Shuo, he sneered, I've been too polite to you. You're happy to live off your wife without any shame. But remember, the kid's not yours. Though the wife still is. When President Kui goes to headquarters, why not send your wife over again to be the first? The entire room burst into laughter. I couldn't take it any longer. I snapped and threw a punch at him, pinning him to the ground as I continued hitting him. His scrawny frame was no match for mine. He kept begging for mercy, but I wasn't listening. At first, the others stood around, amused by the scene. But then they realized I wasn't joking. I was beating him senseless. They rushed in, tearing us apart. I shook off my fist, muttering, who's the one living off others now? Coward, Liang Shuo, he yelled. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Just then, Kui Hao arrived. What's going on here? Who's calling the police? President Kui, Liang Shuo hit me. Look at what he did. Kui Hao's eyes locked on me. Liang Shuo, what's your problem? This is a company, not a marketplace. Kui Hao said, frowning, assaulting a colleague. Your performance bonus for this month is forfeit. Chen Ming scoffed and added, Liang Shuo, I won't bother pursuing this any further. Just compensate me with 50,000 yuan, and we'll call it even. Sure, I said. Then go ahead and call the police. You've got a foul mouth, and I've recorded everything you said. When this gets out, no one's going to walk away clean. Chen Ming was about to explode, but Kui Hao stepped in and blocked him. Enough, Kui Hao said. Everyone disperse. Adults have to take responsibility for their actions. Come on, Chen Ming, you come with me. Fuming, Chen Ming followed Kui Hao out of the room. I glanced around, smirking coldly at everyone. In a low voice, I said, anyone who talks behind my back again will end up just like him. Liang Shuo, aren't you afraid of getting fired? Yeah, acting so arrogant. I couldn't care less. I said, what? At worst, I'll just find another job. I'm not scared. Are you? Can you guarantee you'll find something in this competitive market? Suddenly, the room fell silent. For all their talk, they knew I had the skills to back it up. Honestly, I wouldn't even have joined this company if Liu Ryan hadn't insisted. It's been 5 years now, and my contributions to the company have been undeniable. As for Liu Ryan's rise to deputy manager, she knows exactly how she got there. But after all this time, she started to believe it was all thanks to her own efforts. No rush though. I wanted to see what everyone else was thinking. I was curious to see how far this would go. When Chen Ming finally came out half an hour later, the HR manager was by his side, watching him as he packed up his things to leave. That genuinely surprised me. Attention everyone. Starting this month, anyone who insults or causes trouble in the company without reason will be immediately terminated. Chen Ming is a prime example. As soon as those words were spoken, everyone turned to look at me. I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. They're doing this on purpose. As Chen Ming walked past me, he sneered, "Liang Shuo, you'll sell out your wife for success. I despise you." I smirked but didn't reply, simply watching him leave. Then I turned my gaze toward Kui Hao's office. He was clearly putting me in a difficult position. I immediately headed toward his office to confront him, but the HR manager blocked my way. "Hold on," he said. "President Kui is in a video conference right now. You can't go in." I stared at him. Just now, I beat up Chen Ming and walked away unscathed. So tell me, if I beat you up too, will Kui Hao punish you or fire me? The HR manager froze, unable to respond. He didn't dare stop me. Just as I was about to enter the office, Kui Hao came out. He seemed annoyed when he saw me standing there. "Do you need something? President Kui, have you forgotten what you said? Weren't you going to give me an explanation? Or do you plan to talk here, in front of everyone?" Kui Hao hesitated for a moment, then said, "Let's discuss this outside. Come with me." He gestured for me to follow him. I noticed the furrow in his brow, but I followed him anyway. We went down to the underground parking lot and got into his car. Once seated, Kui Hao handed me an envelope. I squeezed it. Inside was roughly 10,000 yuan. "What's this supposed to mean?" "Liang Shuo," he said, "take the money and you'll be able to keep working here just fine." "Let's not make a fuss over this," Kui Hao said. "Just keep doing your job. You slept with my wife, and now you expect me to just keep working as if nothing happened?" I grabbed him by the collar. "Tell me clearly, when did it start between you two?" Kui Hao's face darkened. "I don't need to explain the details," he said. "Besides, there's more. Here's another bank card. It holds a total of 800,000 yuan, 1 million a year. It's not a bad deal for you. I'm giving you 3 days. Liang Shuo, this is the best offer you'll get. For every day you delay, I'll deduct 1 million. I was about to explode with rage, but he pushed me back. "Think carefully before you speak to me. After all, I'm the one in charge of this company now. If you don't agree and word gets out, crushing you won't be difficult." He threatened me, and I let out a cold laugh before slapping him across the face. I dragged him out of the car and began beating him. Kui Hao was about 7 or 8 years older than me, taller by half a head, but his strength was no match for mine. Before long, I had him pinned against the car's hood. He was furious. "Liang Shuo, you dare hit me? I'll have you killed. I need him." And his face twisted in pain. Grabbing him by the throat, I yelled, "Kui Hao, you dared to touch my wife?" Suddenly, I was knocked to the ground by a strong force. The security guards had arrived and were holding me down. Kui Hao managed to get up, furious and disheveled. "Call the police," he shouted. "Don't call the police." It was Liu Ryan. She had come over from the side entrance. Only then did I realize she had been watching the entire time. "Let him go. Let me talk to him," Liu Ryan said. Kui Hao waved his hand dismissively, opened the car door, and got inside. The security guards released me, but stood not too far away, ready to intervene if needed. I stared at her, my eyes red with anger. "You told me. You were forced. Just say it, and I'll fight for your justice." Liu Ryan looked irritated. "Stop being foolish," she said. "Liang Shuo, let's just end things amicably." I looked at her, and suddenly a surge of rage welled up inside me. "Liu Ryan, we've only been married for 4 years, and you've already been cheating on me. Do you think that's fair to me?" But Liu Ryan remained perfectly calm. "Are you naive or just plain stupid? When did you think the company's overseas projects would go to someone like me? The company has policies. Overseas assignments are for men." Back when they first chose Liu Ryan for the assignment, I was genuinely surprised. But she had assured me that she was talented enough, that they'd make an exception for her, even against the rules. Now she was using that to mock my foolishness. She glanced at her phone, and I saw a family photo her, Kui Hao and the child. How ironic. Liang Shuo, you can't give me what I want. Let's get divorced. She said it as if a great weight had been lifted off her shoulders. I stared at her, my heart aching. In these few years of marriage, I had worried about her constantly. Every month, I'd send her things, afraid she wouldn't have enough money while abroad. Whenever I got paid, I'd give her most of my salary. I cared for her, worried about her, and missed her. Every corner of our home reminded me of her. And now she was asking for a divorce, without the slightest regard for our past. I thought for a moment, then decided once more to make sure. Are you really sure about getting a divorce? Yes, she replied calmly. In fact, we've already registered our marriage abroad. Coming back here is just to make it official. Don't make a fuss. You won't be losing anything. At that moment, I saw the unmistakable contempt and mockery in her eyes. It hit me all at once. I had just been a placeholder all along. Since she no longer cared, I had no reason to hold onto the past. I smiled and nodded. Fine, but don't regret it. I won't, she said confidently. Alright then, I wish you both a lifetime of happiness, never to part. With that, I took the bank card, turned around, and walked away without looking back. Once I returned to the company, I immediately submitted my resignation. The HR manager was shocked, not expecting that after going downstairs, I would return with such a quick decision. The people in the company were buzzing with gossip, but I ignored them. Some of my team members seemed worried. One of them pulled me aside in private. Team leader, are you really resigning? Don't listen to all those rumors. What will happen to us if you leave? The one speaking was Ziliu, a team member who had been with me the longest. He had been with me since he graduated from university, and now he was capable of handling things on his own. Seeing him like this, I patted him on the shoulder. Nothing lasts forever, but once I've got my footing, I'll bring you all back with me. Hearing this, his eyes lit up. Really? I knew you wouldn't just let this go. They said such awful things. But I trust you. I patted his shoulder. The young ones in the team trusted me completely. They had worked with me for years, so they knew my capabilities well. It's only someone like Kui Hao who would be so biased, thinking Liu Ryan had real talent and could bring him success. I couldn't help but smirk inside. Back then, I had used all my family connections to help Liu Ryan establish herself in this company. Her qualifications weren't enough, and she lacked real ability. Without me, she wouldn't have even become a permanent employee. But that's all in the past now. Now we're divorcing. There's no reason for me to use my connections to help her make money anymore. Once I finished the resignation process, I walked out immediately. When Kui Hao saw me, he scoffed disdainfully. I just looked at him and gave him the middle finger. Go pick up scraps, I said. At that, both their faces turned pale. Liu Ryan, I added, make sure you pack up all your things and clear out of my place. I don't need any of it. You don't have to worry. Just throw it all away, she replied coldly. After all, it's all trash anyway. Without caring about her reaction, I walked straight into the elevator. As the doors closed, I couldn't help but feel my eyes sting. I was furious, humiliated, but I swore to myself I would come back stronger. After finalizing the paperwork, I posted a notice on my social media, letting all my friends know about the divorce. Someone invited me out for drinks. I gladly accepted, ready to drown the thought that Liu Ryan had borne another man's child. They were all shocked. Liang Shuo, this sounds like something out of a drama. How could it be this messy? Are you seriously just going to let it go? Why aren't you suing her? We'll back you up. Tell us. Where do those two scumbags live? I quickly stopped them. Calm down. They're not worth it. They're trash. No need to get yourselves involved with them. If you really want to help me, introduce me to some clients later. I'm planning to start my own company and fight them head on. Oh, by the way, I should mention that my family's pretty well off. I didn't want to take over my dad's factory, so I struck out on my own. But now, seeing how things have turned out, I've decided it's time to go independent. They were thrilled to hear that I was finally starting my own business. You should have done this ages ago. Don't worry, we've got your back. They all pounded their chests, promising to support me. Feeling reassured, I went to my dad to ask for startup capital. And soon after, I registered my company. As word got out about me starting a business, Liu Ryan couldn't resist and called me. She had changed her number, so I didn't expect it. When I answered, I heard her say, "Liang Shuo, why are you doing this? It's over between us. There's no need to dwell on the past. You're just trying to get my attention. It's pathetic." I couldn't help but laugh. You think too highly of yourself. This market is big enough for the both of us. If your company can survive, then so can mine. If Kui Hao can't even handle a small fry like me, then you've seriously overestimated him. Just wait, you'll regret this soon enough. Liu Ryan still wasn't satisfied, but I didn't care how she reacted. I hung up the phone and went all in. Although my university wasn't well known, my major was one of the best in the industry. Most of the big names in this field were either my senior classmates or alumni from the same school. So once I put myself out there, many of my seniors began to help me. In the first month, I registered the company and spent time reconnecting with people, not rushing things. One day I'd be having lunch, the next day drinks. By the second month, I started bringing in smaller clients, and the company began generating income. We even added a few employees, though the business hadn't grown much yet. It was around this time that I ran into Liu Ryan and Kui Hao. That day, I had just closed a deal with a big client and went out to grab a bite to eat. I saw Liu Ryan and was about to walk away, but Kui Hao called out to me, "Hey, isn't this Liang Shuo? I heard you've started your own company recently." "That's great." "Not bad," I replied. Kui Hao, unimpressed, said, "The market's tough right now. Starting a business is risky. You should save your money. Don't end up bankrupt and burn through all your family's wealth." "That's none of your concern," I shot back, giving him a sideways glance. "But speaking of which, it's been 3 months already, and I still haven't received your wedding invitation. Hurry it up. You wouldn't want people saying you're living together without being married. It already sounds bad enough that you took your subordinate's wife. Now, it's even worse if you don't give her a proper title." I then looked directly at Liu Ryan. "What are you even getting out of this?" Liu Ryan snapped. "What business is it of yours? You should take a look at yourself first. All your so-called senior classmates have been calling me, saying you've been begging them for help lately. Without a big company backing you, your connections won't get you far." I smiled without saying a word. Kui Hao looked at me with nothing but disdain in his eyes. These past 3 months, while I was working on deals, I was also quietly investigating them. Kui Hao was supposed to be a successful man. He could have had any woman he wanted. So why Liu Ryan? She wasn't even the most attractive woman in the company, and she'd been married before. What was he after? After our divorce, I realized something was off, so I started digging. And what I found surprised me. I didn't tell her yet though. Seeing Liu Ryan like this today, I couldn't help but anticipate the day when the truth would finally come out. Waving my hand dismissively, I said, "All right then. Carry on, I'm off." As I walked away, Kui Hao called out sarcastically, "Liang Shuo, if you're ever free, come by. We're hiring security guards at the company. Might want to secure a backup plan." I kept walking, hearing a few mocking laughs behind me, but I didn't let it bother me. For 3 months, Kui Hao had been oblivious, but in another 3 months, I started stealing his clients. At first, Kui Hao didn't realize what was happening, but when my former team members began resigning to join me, he finally started to take notice. 6 months later, I faced off with Kui Hao for the first time, fighting for SC Company's project. At the airport, Kui Hao, with his team, rushed ahead of me and took the advantageous position, blocking my people behind. Liang Song, you're late. One wrong step and you'll be wrong at every step. I think you should go back and dance. Zi Liu, in a fit of anger, was about to rush forward. I pulled them back. Rushing forward is like sending yourself to death. Just let them wait at the front. Let's head outside. I dragged Zi Liu to the airport cafe to get some coffee. We sat down and had breakfast. Only after a leisurely meal did I pack up something to take with us. Be careful. Brother, you're not going to meet the client. President Chen is the head of this project. If we don't secure this deal, it'll fall through. Relax. Trust me, he'll come soon. Upon hearing this, Zi Liu was in disbelief, but still obediently followed my lead. After just a short while, we saw a middle-aged man dressed in trendy shirts and oversized shorts. He looked like he was on vacation, dragging a large suitcase. He walked straight towards me. I immediately opened the car door. Xiao Yuan, finally, you're here. I handed him the packed breakfast I had prepared and casually took his suitcase, signaling Zi Liu to lend a hand. Zi Liu looked absolutely dumbfounded. Uncle? Yep, my uncle. He was the one who recommended I study this field back in the day. Now he's a top expert in the industry, also the overall head of the SC project. Zi Liu was utterly shocked. He gave me a thumbs up. We got in the car. My uncle looked at me, clicking his tongue in amazement. You really ended up on this path, kid. Uncle, stop teasing me. I got trapped into this situation. Trapped, not quite. At least you still get to collaborate with me. This time, I'm not doing someone else's dirty work. Hearing that, my uncle burst into laughter. Then he patted me on the shoulder. Good that you think like that. I'm staying at your place. I'm tired of staying in hotels. No problem. I snapped my fingers and Zi Liu drove us to my new home. I had already moved out of the old house. Now I live in a small villa my dad gave me. One of the rooms had been converted into a studio. I brought Zi Liu and the others back to the villa too. After closing the door, we started negotiating inside the villa. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kui Hao and his team were freaking out. They were still waiting, thinking we were stuck at the airport. But by then, my uncle and I had already finalized the contract. They didn't even catch a glimpse of us. Rumor has it, Kui Hao was jumping up and down in frustration at the airport. When I heard that, I couldn't help but laugh. Being early is useless. What can you do when my uncle's got my back? After signing the contract, my uncle said solemnly, our family's kids should never let others bully them. SC is hosting a business banquet, and I'll announce our partnership there. Xiao Yuan, settle your grudges if you have them. Thanks, uncle. Not only did I secure the contract, I also stole a few of Kui Hao's clients on the side. I signed them up with lightning speed. I invited a few close friends to have dinner with Zizan and me. The circle is small. Everyone knows each other's backgrounds well. There wasn't much to hide. Once they found out about my relationship with my uncle, everyone understood the situation. Business partnerships are one thing, but alliances are another. I enjoyed the dinner thoroughly, but on my way to the restroom, I saw you, Ryan. Her face was swollen and red. Tears hung in her eyes. The moment she saw me, her expression turned sour. I ignored her and walked past, but she called out to me, Liang Shuo. I turned to look at her. Something you need? My indifferent attitude disappointed her. She grew nervous. Are you feeling proud now? Finally getting your revenge? You must be laughing at Duan, right? I suddenly found it amusing. Yes. Are you talking about the time you cheated during your marriage? Had a child with your boss? Or when you got beaten up while drinking with clients? I raised my voice deliberately. Everyone around could hear. The people passing by, including the waitstaff, all looked on with curiosity. Liu Ryan's face turned pale green. She never expected me to speak like that in front of so many people. Fuming with anger, she stammered. You! I patted her shoulder. Try being a decent person. I turned and walked away. Her face was contorted with rage. I just chuckled. I've always been someone who holds grudges. I may not be good at many things, but when it comes to unsettling people, I make sure I succeed. Liu Ryan's face was livid with anger, but she had no way to fight back. What happened to her afterward was no longer any concern of mine. When the day of the banquet arrived, I saw Liu Ryan again. She looked much more haggard. Time had clearly taken its toll. Holding a glass of champagne, she followed Kui Hao through the crowd. When she spotted me, Liu Ryan clung to Kui Hao's arm as the two of them walked toward me. Liang Shuo, you still dared to show up alone today? I was curious. How would they react once they knew the truth? I smiled. Why wouldn't I dare? SC is announcing their partner today, after all. By the way, Director Kui didn't manage to meet your contact at the airport that day? At this point, Kui Hao straightened his clothes, his face darkening. He glanced at Liu Ryan. Go find out what's going on. Not long after, she returned, nodding and saying, SC has already announced their partner. Looks like we were too late. Kui Hao's face instantly fell. He muttered, which company was fortunate enough to secure it? What's going on? Since you took over, not a single project has succeeded, and you've lost several clients. Right in front of me. He started berating Liu Ryan. Her face flushed with embarrassment. While I couldn't help but smirk, she knew exactly how those clients were lost. Without me, now she understood just how difficult things really were. I interjected. The partner is Shobo Technology. A brief silence fell. Then Kui Hao burst into laughter. You don't mean to say that's your company, do you? He laughed loudly, mocking the idea. But his laughter was hollow. His laughter caught the attention of the people nearby. This guy, who holds no real title, was actually claiming that SC would partner with his newly established company. You must be joking, right? He sneered. But as he kept laughing, he noticed that the people around him remained silent. Suddenly, his expression turned a bit grim. Impossible. How could this be? I just shrugged. Sure, my company may be new, but it's backed by my father's large conglomerate. What company wouldn't want to partner with us? If Kui Hao and Liu Ryan had used their brains, they would have realized that I'm the one they should have never crossed. But now, they've missed their best opportunity. Kui Hao stammered. Your family's conglomerate ... Someone nearby chimed in. Of course. Liang Shuo is the only son of Liang Jingbiao. You didn't know that? At this moment, Kui Hao's face turned ashen. Even Liu Ryan looked utterly stunned. She was about to speak. But then my uncle appeared and officially announced our partnership. In front of everyone, we exchanged contracts, sealing the deal with a handshake. The whole room was in awe, and I made it clear to them that I had won this round by a landslide. Kui Hao's face went pale as he stood in disbelief. I glanced around the room and nodded at Liu Ryan. Her body trembled slightly, unable to believe what she was witnessing. She couldn't fathom that I was actually the son of the Liang family. Back then, to be with her, I had hidden my family background. After all, Liu Ryan always said she wanted to succeed on her own, and she looked so determined and independent when she said it. I thought that if I had relied on my family's wealth from the start, I couldn't imagine how much she would have mocked me, so I didn't say much about it. I even bought a small apartment and worked hard with her, planning to tell her everything when the time was right. But Liu Ryan was too career-driven, even contemplating moving abroad. All I could do was occasionally send her gifts and money. My passionate efforts were rewarded with her betrayal. I was devastated, hitting rock bottom. Yet, I never truly thought of getting revenge on her. After all, we were heading down different paths. Now, I feel a strange sense of peace. In business, harmony brings prosperity. She's not worth my anger. After that incident, I signed a formal contract with Zhenzhen's SC company. Even though he's my uncle, business is business. Everything had to be clearly stated. If there was any dissatisfaction, we'd be ready to renegotiate at any time. I kept a straight face, quietly following along with my uncle. 2 months later, Kui Hao couldn't hold out any longer. I had Ziliu and the team keep a close eye on things, grabbing every client that became available. Those clients were originally mine, and now they were simply returning to me. Kui Hao couldn't take the pressure anymore. So when Liu Ryan came looking for me, I wasn't surprised at all. Given their capabilities, it was already impressive that they lasted this long. As she stood there, fists clenched, she glared at me. Liang Shuo, did you enjoy playing me? I was a bit taken aback. Play you? What are you talking about? You had all that money and you still lied to me. You tricked me. She raised her fist and started pounding my chest. I quickly grabbed her hand. Liu Ryan, I said calmly, do you really think this makes you more appealing? Listen carefully. It's too late for regrets. We're finished. Upon hearing that, her face turned deathly pale. Liang Shuo, you should leave now. I told her to keep her distance from me, mainly because I didn't want to get involved in any further problems. The ticking time bombs they've planted are about to go off, and I'm just waiting to see how Liu Ryan's fate unfolds. But considering we were once married, I couldn't help but give her some advice. Kui Hao is no good. You should distance yourself from him as soon as possible. At this point, I didn't want to meddle any further. Liu Ryan was escorted out by my people, but she still wouldn't give up and kept trying to get involved. However, before she could even start complaining to me, she was exposed for being the other woman. Her affair became public knowledge. When I saw the news, I couldn't help but laugh. It had only been 2 days since Liu Ryan last tried to see me. It seemed someone had acted fast. Liu Ryan was beaten by the legal wife, had her clothes torn off, and was thrown onto the street. A crowd gathered to watch. Only then did she realize that Kui Hao was never a bachelor. He was a married man. His wife had long had health issues and couldn't bear children, so they conspired together with Kui Hao, hoping Liu Ryan would give them a son. Liu Ryan, however, thought that Kui Hao genuinely cared about her. She believed they were in a romantic relationship, that it was love. She even divorced me. Determined to have a son for Kui Hao, she returned to China, hoping to become Mrs. Kui. But after a while, Kui Hao became more and more distant, never mentioning the idea of getting married again. After the reminder I gave her that day, it seemed Liu Ryan started piecing things together. When she returned, she confronted Kui Hao. Annoyed, he told her to get lost. Liu Ryan threatened to sue him, which finally caught the attention of his wife. His wife had been through a lot in life, so she handled Liu Ryan like the mistress she was and beat her up. Not only that, she went on the offensive. Using the power of the internet, she stirred up a scandal. She didn't need to say much. In front of everyone, she stripped Liu Ryan of her dignity, making her a public target of shame. And while all of this unfolded, Kui Hao stayed hidden in the background, watching silently. He didn't clear her name or protect her. I found it laughable. This was the man Liu Ryan chose. She sacrificed her marriage for so-called love, only to end up with the reputation of a mistress. She couldn't take it anymore. She called me saying she regretted everything. I blocked her immediately. Am I some kind of fool? Do I have to take her back? Soon, the truth about Liu Ryan and Kui Hao's affair abroad also came to light. But the internet wasn't really after the truth. The bigger the scandal, the more they wanted to feast on it. The more dramatic it got, the more eagerly they consumed it. Some people even managed to trace things back to me. Smart move, cutting your losses in time. Bro, you must have seen this coming from a mile away. After Liu Ryan was beaten up, the gossip spread like wildfire. A lot of netizens started addressing me directly online, calling me the real winner. Of course, I saw the original video, and not only did I watch it, I even shared a clip myself. Now, Kuihao wouldn't have it easy either. Public opinion is a double-edged sword. As her ex-husband, I became the biggest winner. Everyone started saying I was a devoted man who hadn't fully moved on in the 3 years since my wife left me. Then, just as she returned, she kicked me aside. My company received a surge of attention as a result. I seized the opportunity and pulled away the last few profitable projects Kuihao had. He couldn't hold out any longer. The day Kuihao announced his bankruptcy, Liu Ryan came to confront him. She couldn't tolerate being used like this. After all, she was still the mother of his child and was in her breastfeeding period. The baby wasn't even 2 years old yet, and no court would rule in Kuihao's favor. The argument escalated at the company. Liu Ryan furiously scolded Kuihao. You wanted a son so badly? Is there some throne in your family that needs inheriting? You can't even come up with 10 million now. Kuihao sneered. And you think you're worth 10 million? Any woman can have a child. It just so happened you were abroad, which made you convenient and cheap. Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked you. Liu Ryan, enraged, lashed out, her hand striking at his face, leaving scratches all over him. Unwilling to back down, Kuihao pushed her away violently. Unexpectedly, Liu Ryan crashed into the glass door, and a sharp pierced directly into her lower abdomen. Things took a drastic turn. Her injuries were severe, and even after being saved, she refused to settle the matter peacefully. Kuihao was now in a complete mess, and his legal wife even assaulted him in the hospital. It was then that I found out Kuihao was nothing more than a kept man. In the end, Kuihao gave Liu Ryan 3 million yuan, and custody of the child went to her. He ultimately divorced his legal wife and ended up with Liu Ryan, but their life together wasn't smooth. His company had completely collapsed, and his reputation in the industry had been thoroughly tarnished. If Kuihao and Liu Ryan had chosen to live quietly with their child, they might have been able to get by. But unfortunately, he refused to accept defeat, insisting on starting a new business. At nearly 40 years old, starting over in business was no easy task. In this industry, capital, connections, and timing are essential. Kuihao had none of these, and Liu Ryan's abilities were average at best. The two of them struggled for half a year, and they lost all the money they had. Around that time, their child was diagnosed with autism. Both of them were completely stunned. Kuihao, after much thought, shifted the blame onto Liu Ryan, angrily shouting, "You're nothing but bad luck." Liu Ryan, not one to back down, fought with him. The two became a pair of resentful partners, constantly arguing and fighting. They even brawled in public. I just shook my head. This was the life Liu Ryan had pursued. It was her choice, wasn't it? A year later, I never saw Liu Ryan again. By that time, she was at a nightclub. When I saw her, I couldn't help but be stunned. A year had passed since I last saw Liu Ryan, and here she was, dressed provocatively, weaving through the crowd in a place like this. She was fawning over men, calling them boss and brother, all for a few bottles of beer. Seeing her in that state left me speechless. Liu Ryan noticed me as well, hesitated for a moment, and then walked toward me. "Big boss, how about buying a few bottles for me?" I pulled out a few red bills and handed them to her. "What are you doing here? Where's Kuihao? We divorced. He took the child." I nodded, realizing she had even lost custody of her child. But every month, I still have to send him 3,000 yuan for child support. Liu Ryan took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Liang Song, buy a few more bottles. How about covering the whole night for me?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not some fool. Buying out the whole night? You wish." She froze for a moment. Her expression immediately darkened. I shook my head and walked away. I missed out once, and I wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. After that, I never saw her again. I heard she latched onto some wealthy old man, but his children chased her through the streets, beating her up. Later, I also heard her poor son, diagnosed with autism, was sent to the countryside where he drowned just a few days later. But none of that concerns me anymore. My company is thriving, and my days are filled with business meetings and negotiations. I barely have time to think about her. She chose her path, and now she has to walk it. End of story. For everyone involved,